Back in 2013, I was still pretty big on Let's Plays, and one of my favorite Let's Players was Josh Jepson. I mostly liked him for his versus videos that he made with his friend attacking toucans, but I still really enjoyed his solo stuff. On the 22nd of June 2013, he uploaded his first part of his playthrough of a little indie game called A Hat in Time, a game by a studio called Gears for Breakfast that was mainly developed by Jonas Karlov, a game that would eventually become one of my absolute favorite games ever. At the time, it was still a prototype, so it only had a tiny fraction of what would be in the final game, and what was there was not only very unpolished, but also just very different to the game we would eventually get. This specific build he got was meant for YouTubers and game journalists, so they can promote the Kickstarter. So normal people or failed YouTubers like me never got to play that build. People who did support the Kickstarter would eventually get other early demos, including the alpha and beta, but never the prototype. I did eventually get my hands on the alpha and beta, but the prototype eludes me to this day. And that sucks because it's the build that has the most differences and it's just the first one I've seen, so I really want to play it. I can't complain too much though. The alpha and beta builds are pretty dang cool too. They have a ton of small differences that's just fun to find. There's even some big ones like some cut levels and characters. There's also an option for 1 frame per second, and why? Imagine playing the whole game like this. Anyway, I was obsessed with this game when I first discovered it. It just looked so fun and charming, not to mention I was beyond starved for 3D platformers at the time. There is just one problem. I only had a Wii U. The main dev, Jonas Karlov, did express interest in a Wii U port, but it seemed less and less likely to happen as time went on. Because of this, my hype did slowly go down. Don't get me wrong, I thought the game still looked great, but it's hard to be excited for something you can't even play. Thankfully, after only a couple months of the game's original release, it came out on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and that's how I originally played it. Since then, I've gotten a PC that's more than capable of running the game at full settings, which is why I'm focusing on that version, and it also came out on Nintendo Switch. And of course, just like always, I'll cover the console versions at the end. Oh, and if you're wondering why I bought this game 3 times, don't worry, I didn't. I bought it 4 times. Yeah, there's a collector's edition back there. You've probably seen it every one of my videos, I think. And it's actually really cool. The collector's edition was originally a Kickstarter award, but it eventually became available to everyone thanks to the website The Yeti. It comes with an N64 inspired box, a poster, the game code that's printed on an N64 cartridge thing, and this manual that I very much recommend reading. There's a digital version so you don't have to buy this like I did. The whole thing has a ton of really nice art and is written Hat Kid's fish out of water perspective and even mentions the DK bongos a couple of times. This is seriously one of my favorite manuals, it's so good. Anyway, I should probably get into the game now. A Hat in Time starts off with this little girl simply known as Hat Kid waking up from her alarm in her spaceship. She's flying through space so she can get to her home planet. Suddenly she's stopped by a mafia goon who tells her all boats must pay a toll in Mafia Town, even boats in space. Hat Kid ignores him, which causes him to punch through the glass, making all of Hat Kid's timepieces get sucked into the vacuum of space, scattering them across the entire planet. I love how she just looks annoyed rather than upset, as if this has happened before. What sucks about this is these timepieces double as her ship's fuel, so without these, she can't get home. Hat Kid then spends some time in Mafia Town picking up whatever timepieces she can before running into Mustache Girl. A little girl who has a mustache because I guess mermaid magic, I don't know. Mustache Girl invites Hat Kid to join her rebellion to take down Mafia Town, and this is where you learn that it was once a peaceful place but was forcibly taken over by the Mafia. I love this planning part because it shows Mustache Girl being an absolute psychopath and claiming choking the mafia and making them beg for mercy is too kind, before settling with grinding them into mush and stuffing the remains in a jar, in which she's successful at, by the way. I was not expecting that, to say the least. Sorry, getting a little off topic here, just what? After taking down the leader of the mafia, Mustache Girl learns that timepieces can also control time, and she wants to use that ability to prevent the mafia from ever taking over the island to begin with, and stop all kinds of other bad stuff from happening. Hat Kid refuses because she just wants to get home, and Mustache Girl sees this as an incredibly selfish thing and vows to collect all of them before you. So in short, the goal of this game is to get the timepieces before Mustache Girl and just get home. But don't worry, there's no time limit or anything, that's just a story thing. I absolutely love this plot because Hat Kid is kind of a brat. Typically, especially in platformers, the protagonist is risking their life for selfless reasons. But not Hat Kid. Not only is Hat Kid completely ignoring the good things these things can do, she really doesn't care what she has to do to get them. Destroying the mafia, helping the mafia, solving a murder mystery, committing a murder, throwing the souls of completely random people into a fire, cleaning a well, intentionally crashing a cruise ship into an iceberg, saving everyone on board, joining a gang, betraying that very same gang. She just does not care, and I love it. I just kind of love Hat Kid, period. She has such a strong design, making her cute was clearly the goal, and they very much succeeded. Her top hat and cape, and especially her voice, that's really what makes her adorable.
Bye. You'll come with me. Oh, hi.
Oh, look at this idle animation, it's so cute! The way she looks away and gets nervous and puts him away, I love it. Another thing I love about Hat Kid is just the way she controls. This might sound like I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. If it wasn't for Super Mario Odyssey, I'd say this is the best controlling 3D platformer ever. This game came out a few months before Odyssey, so there was actually a very brief period of time where I would say it is the best controlling one. I'm pretty bad at explaining stuff like this, so just take my word for it that she feels great to control. Her weight, her movement, it feels like I'm in complete control, it's great. She also has a lot of movement options. There's the typical double jump, but there's also the dive. This thing allows you to go much further distances, and you can even cancel it whenever. You can also use the dive to just get around faster, and if you happen to roll out of it just as you touch the ground, you get a massive burst of speed, which is the fastest form of movement in the game. There's a homing attack, which is basically just a slower version of what Sonic has. There's the wall jump, and Hat Kid even climbs up a few feet before initiating it. Combining all these moves together has some serious potential. There's all kinds of satisfying skips you can pull off, and it's so great. Taking very obvious inspiration from Mario's Sunshine, you can also balance on tight ropes. Unlike Mario, there's a certain flow these have that Mario just doesn't. There's no momentum killing landings and jumps, making it really fun to just jump from one rope to another. This mechanic is a lot of fun, and I just wish more games did it. The only thing is I really like how you can swing around on the tight ropes in Sunshine. You can't do that in this game. But other than that, yeah, these are great. Aside from the basic moves, you also have the hats. You unlock these slowly throughout the game as you get more timepieces and yarn balls. You need to be at a certain point in the game in order for it to even show up in the menu in the first place, and you need a certain amount of yarn balls for Hat Kid to knit one up. They all have different functions that are just required to progress through the game, or just to make the game easier. The default hat you start off with, the kid's hat, just shows where your destination is. This one's usually the most pointless one to me. I've played the game multiple times, so I kinda know where everything is, and I don't remember using it at all in my first playthrough. But I still wear it most of the time because I just like Hat Kid's default appearance because, I don't know, I'm boring. There's the sprint hat, which makes Hat Kid run faster. Not as fast as diving, but it's good if you don't have the room for that. There's the brewing hat, a hat that allows you to throw explosive beakers that allow you to clear out some otherwise unbreakable boxes or even vandalize memorials. The ice hat turns Hat Kid into an ice statue, and that allows you to bounce on these panels that will launch you into other places. There's the Forest Dweller's Mask. This one's really cool. Basically, whenever you see a green transparent platform, there's supposed to be platforms from another dimension or something, and the Forest Dweller's Mask allows you to walk on them for a brief period of time, or even the opposite, allowing you to go through a wall or floor you couldn't otherwise. This mask provides for easily some of the most fun and inventive platforming in the game. And finally, there's the Time Stop hat. On top of reminding you how death is inevitable, it dramatically slows down time. It's not used a ton. In fact, a lot of the times where it's quote-unquote required, you can still do it without it, but it's still a cool idea and it's still useful in a select few cases. Throughout the game, you'll find a bunch of different collectibles. I already mentioned yarn balls, but there's a few others. There's rift tokens. Get 3 of these and you can use them to get something via a slot machine. Within a gumball machine. I never realized how weird that was until I typed it out. Those can include things like remixes that you can play in the main levels. Shoutouts to the Clock Towers Beneath the Sea remix, it's so good. There's dyes that can change Hat Kid's color scheme. There's even one based off the main character from One Shot, so that's neat. Like I said before, I like Hat Kid's default appearance, so I tend to leave these alone, but it's still a nice thing to have. You can also get hat flares, which just change how your hats look. One of them is just literally Vivian's hat from Paper Mario that throws in your door, and obviously I never not have that. So yeah, all this stuff is purely cosmetic, nothing that'll actually help you, but it's cool stuff to have. If you want things that are actually of use, make sure to collect plenty of pawns throughout the game. There are these green ball gem things that are predictably the currency of this game, and you mainly use them to buy badges from the badge seller. The badges are yet another thing lifted from Paper Mario. They're a bit simplified though. Instead of badge points, you just have up to 3 badge slots. The badges can be pretty cool. There's some really useful ones like the Fast Hatter badge, which shortens the warm-up time after the use of certain hats, the Hover badge, which basically makes it so you never take fall damage. In my opinion, the most useful one would be the Item Magnet badge. It does exactly what it says, but I think it's especially useful for gathering more pawns. Another good one is the No Bonk badge. It makes it so that you never bonk on walls, so you don't have to time your jumps out of a dive, but I mostly like it because you can do this, and it's fun. There's some badges that honestly shouldn't be badges and just be a thing that you can do, like the camera badge. It just gives you a photo mode. Not a thing I'm super into personally, but I know a ton of people love stuff like this. But I don't see why it has to be a badge. Definitely a more egregious example would be the grappling hook badge. This is a thing that you just need to beat the game, and the fact that it's a badge just seems so arbitrary. It's especially annoying because how frequently you need it. It basically means there's a whole badge slot you'll just never use. Other than that, there's some more useless badges like the Mumble badge, which just makes it so that everyone talks like a Banjo-Kazooie character. There's a one-hit badge for those who want pain. I like the badge system a lot for similar reasons to why I like the badges in Paper Mario. I just think making a couple of these abilities into badges were a bit questionable. In the place of rift tokens, if there's any to find, you can also find relics. Relics are used on the podium spread around Hat Kid's ship. They can be anything from a bouncy burger to a crayon box. Once you figure out which relics go together, a new time rift opens in the corresponding level. Yes, time rifts. The idea of these are some timepieces shattered upon impact, causing these blue and purple time vortex things to spawn. The blue ones just automatically spawn as you complete the missions in each level, while the purple ones are the ones the relics are tied to. Each of them are hidden in levels, but you can get a hint on where they are by looking at these photos on the Mission Select menu. The blue ones are so obviously inspired by the floodless levels from Mario Sunshine. I mean, look at this. This platform is literally from Sunshine. I may be a bit biased, but I love these. They're really well designed pure platforming stages that often take elements that are used in that level and use them in unique ways. You also platform on cookies, so there's my proof that these were good. The second, slightly less common rift types are the purple ones. These ones are definitely more interesting. Gameplay wise, you just travel from section to section collecting these golden pawns so you can get to the next area, but the gameplay isn't why these are so interesting. These are meant to tell the story and how these levels came to be through the level itself, so you'll have things like the Mafia taking over the town. Or you'll even see the perspective of both sides from the Battle of the Birds chapter. You tend to get more details in this stuff by finding these hidden pictures throughout each of these. Finding all the pictures can be a bit of a hassle because you never know if you found all the pictures in the area you're in before moving on, but they're not required at all for anything, so whatever, I guess. As for the actual levels you're exploring, you might be wondering what level design approach this game has, and well, it doesn't actually stick to one style. Some levels are more open-ended, others are linear paths. Some are both. I kinda like this. I definitely have a preference for the more open stuff, but I feel mixing with some linear level design adds a lot of variety and allows them to play around with some more platforming intensive level design, or even tell self-contained stories or have interesting scenarios. Yeah, that's another thing I gotta praise this game for, the scenarios. One of the games this one took inspiration from that I've already mentioned several times is Paper Mario, more specifically the Thousand Year Door, and I can see plenty of that. There's a ton of references like this owl who can't find his contact lens, or the sound effect that I swear is just ripped right out of that game.
Been found.
But they also took inspiration in the core game. Easily my favorite thing about the Paper Mario games would be the scenarios they throw you into, and A Hat in Time does that exact same thing. Chapter 2 has you getting stuck in an argument between two bird movie directors, DJ Grooves and the conductor. DJ Grooves being a perpetually dancing disco penguin from the moon, and the conductor being a bird. At least that's what the game says. He's an angry Scotsman who makes exclusively Western movies. I love both of these guys, but I especially love the conductor. They have a lot of humor revolving around him being a jerk, and they have him swearing at everyone all the time. Okay, he doesn't actually say anything bad, just peckneck, which is an in-universe swear. Anyway, the conductor is great. Both of them are aiming to win the upcoming award number 42 by making the better movies than the other, so Hat Kid ends up starring in all of their movies, along with making a passport that you can draw on, and that picture ends up being your save file, and I love opening up this game to be greeted by these things I drew. Anyway, these movies include things like leading a deadly parade that has missiles for some reason, starring in a murder mystery, becoming a diva, and running through a train as it's about to explode. The conductor's levels are definitely more interesting, but Murder on the Owl Express is a highlight for me. The whole point of this is you have to do some light platforming, puzzles, stealth, and gather as many clues as you can while you're under a scripted time limit. And by that, I mean time will only go down once you get to a certain point in the level, so you don't have to worry about anything. Gameplay-wise, this level's fine, but nothing mind-blowing. But that's not why this level is so great. The reason why people, including me, love this part so much is because it's easily the funniest part in the game. It's filled with these crows that constantly ask you personal details, things like your pet's childhood pet's name, your favorite combination of letters and numbers, I love the subtlety on that one, or your superhero name, almost as if they're trying to hack into your Gmail or something. I love when they ask you a body part you're most ashamed of, and you see them making fun of that much later in the level. I have the sense of humor of a 12-year-old, I know. My favorite is the one that asks you to solve this advanced mathematical and scientific equation, and it's just some internet captcha. And when you do, he thanks you for solving the equation and agreeing to the terms and conditions on the back of the board, and then you look behind it and it's just this massive wall of text. I love that. Also, can I just admire how genius of a pun it is that this level is full of crows and it's about solving a murder mystery. In case you don't know, a murder means a group of crows. It took me like at least 3 playthroughs to realize that. At the end of this stage, you get to select who the murderer was and determine the ending. And Hat Kid's ending is absolutely the best. I had to do it, or the voices wouldn't stop. The conductor starts throwing crazy accusations at you that get more and more disturbing and grotesque while the camera zooms in on Hat Kid smiling. I lost it when I first saw this. This is amazing. The other conductor mission is Train Rush. This is probably the best part of the chapter gameplay-wise because the platforming here is really great. In this, you're running through a train that's about to blow up, all while it's being sawed up, derailed, filled with toxic waste or even lava, and the most intense song plays in the background. You can grab clocks to extend your time, but if you're a real pro hatter like me, you skip all of them to hear that intense music speed up dramatically. I really like this level because the level design is pretty crazy. The way everything breaks apart while you're running through it is kind of thrilling. It almost reminds me of the more recent DKC games. It starts off with a conductor telling you they're not filming a movie right now, but right before the level really begins, it's revealed that the conductor is a dirty liar, and you better get to the end if you prefer to live. At the end, it's revealed that he only did this because he wanted genuine terror out of Hat Kid. This guy is a jerk and I love him. DJ Grooves' levels are a lot less thrilling, but they're still full of charm. The first has DJ Grooves trying to build up Hat Kid's acting career by making her into a diva. What this really means is have her perform all kinds of acts in front of a camera to dictate the public perception of her. My favorite part of this is if you run by some NPCs, they'll take a picture of you, and Hat Kid starts off by getting caught off guard with every picture, but she quickly gets into it by striking poses and generally having a good time, and I think that's just so adorable. The big parade isn't super eventful either, you just lead a parade and avoid the typical parade missile while pressing switches and stuff, but it's adorable, so it's fine. What's really cool about this is at the end of each level, the movie is ranked by what's basically a Rotten Tomatoes score, and whatever director has the most points wins the award and becomes the boss fight of that chapter. For this playthrough I went with DJ Grooves, but the conductor is definitely a lot more fitting. DJ Grooves is such a sweetheart, I don't think he'd kill a child for a trophy. But the conductor, yeah, definitely. Chapter 3, SUBCON Forest, is another level with a ton of charm. This level drops Hat Kid into a haunted forest and she very quickly gets captured by the Snatcher. The Snatcher is this demon that eats the souls of the living. He's based off those treasure demons from Thousand Year Door, and he even yells out "Fool." I love it. He was going to devour Hat Kid's soul, but this time he needs someone to do some of the jobs for him because the last person to do that was coincidentally murdered. So he forces you to sign some contracts that include some pretty mundane things like cleaning a well, delivering mail, murdering forest spirits, defeating a demonic outhouse, and invading a demon lady's house. That last one's pretty crazy because the game briefly becomes a genuine horror game. I'm not joking. It's called Queen Vanessa's Manor. There's puzzles to solve, keys to collect, letters full of lore to read, and a monster to hide and run from. Her AI only ever enters rooms in scripted segments, only ever wandering around in hallways otherwise, and she becomes a lot less scary when you do know that, but it's still far scarier than anything you typically see in a game like this. I'm 23 years old now, so obviously this doesn't affect me a lot, but man, when I was a kid, I was afraid of a piano with teeth. This would have traumatized me. Thankfully, if Queen Vanessa is too much for you, you can skip the whole thing by crawling into a hidden area here. Raz from Psychonauts also has a hidden outline at the end, so that's cool. I don't even like horror games, but I love this part for how unique and out of nowhere it is. If Queen Vanessa's horror isn't enough for you, there's also hanging bodies all over SUBCON Swamp, demonic nooses you can swing from that try to convince you to hang yourself, and these statues that sometimes come to life and sometimes don't. I think that inconsistency is scarier than Queen Vanessa herself, honestly. I adore how dark this level is, but it's probably a bit much for younger players. I really enjoy the missions in this level, but I don't think it's well designed for exploration. This is one of the more open levels in this game, but the missions tend to take you on straight paths. But the moment you decide to explore is when the problems become super obvious. This level is designed in a very similar way Toast Arena from Super Mario Odyssey is, where all the segments are pretty spread out and there's a lot of nothing in between. It works just fine in Odyssey because it's a desert, nothing is obstructing your view and you can get around really quickly with either a jacksie or you can just teleport to another checkpoint. SUBCON Forest is a forest, so the trees make it impossible to tell where you are in relation to everything else, and there is no quick way to get around. These two things make it so annoying to explore because I straight up can't remember where anything is, even if I can do that with every other level in the game. You have to explore this level too. There's fire spirits throughout the level that you have to kill in order to open up more of the level, snatcher traps to get trapped in to get more contracts, and a ton of yarn balls you have to collect in order to get the final hat. I definitely wouldn't say this ruins the level because I still love it, but it is a pretty big hit against it. The other levels in the base game don't have as much of an ongoing story that create interesting scenarios, but they're still great. The very first level is Mafia Town, which gives me very strong Delfino Plaza vibes, and I don't doubt that's why this level is my favorite to mess around in. There's also the fact that the Mafia are just so great. They're dull-witted and unnecessarily violent, like they talk about beating up seagulls with children and getting angry about confusing science owls. Some of them trip Hat Kid when you walk by them, and others play patty cake with you. Oh, it's so cute. Oh god! There's also graffiti everywhere that says stuff like, if it's not Mafia, it's not quality, or Mustache Girl wanted posters that offer an octopus. And I love that Mafia dude that's always rolling on that massive piece of meat. There's also a part where you trick the Mafia into thinking you're a goopy space alien and they run around screaming. I love these guys so much. Hat Kid also wears a raincoat in the rainy levels and it's so cute. There's also a level where Mafia Town is covered in lava, and not only is this one a lot of fun to play, but I'm like absolutely positive this is another Mario Sunshine reference, and obviously that warms the cockles of my heart. The very last level in the base game is actually Alpine Skyline, a level that takes place in the highest peaks of mountains, and it has a very different structure than the rest, as in it just throws you in without any specific missions. You just need to find the timepieces on your own. On paper, this sounds like it'd be the most open level in the game, but ironically, it's the most linear by far. The actual way this level is designed is there's a central mountain that branches off into other mountains that eventually lead off into timepieces. This area has easily the strongest platforming in the game, and also the blandest. So at the end of these paths, you have things like the birdcage, a literal lava cake, the windmill peak, or the Twilight Bell. I like these parts a lot, the Twilight Bell especially is cool. This is a level that really makes use of the Forest Dweller's mask. You do things like intentionally falling through to get to lower paths, fading away walls causing a gate to lower. There's also these anti-bell things. They make it so that no matter what, any platform around them, you just can't walk on. They often either act as an obstacle or even as a way of progressing through, and that's creative, I like it. The windmill is probably my favorite platforming section in the game. I just love the idea of platforming both in and outside a windmill to get to the top. On top of the song here is just kind of incredible. More on the music later. I promise I have a ton to say about that. So I love these sections, but honestly, I'm not a fan of the parts leading up to these areas. They all feel very samey, they all have the same look, and aside from a few parts, have basically the same challenges. They also have these cat thieves which steal your stuff and come out of literally nowhere, and I hate them. I'd love to say this isn't a huge issue, but it kind of is, considering these parts make up about half the level. However, the actual main levels you're heading to have some of the strongest gameplay in the game, and it's not like the parts leading up to them are bad, I just feel like they're not nearly as interesting as the rest of the game. Overall, Alpine Skyline is a solid level, but it's still my least favorite in the main game. My actual least favorite would be Arctic Cruise, the level that's included in the first DLC, Seal the Deal. It's a level that takes place on a cruise ship that's almost entirely run by these seals that are beyond completely inept at their jobs, but they're insanely cute and are trying their best. Yeah, this level, just like every other level, has a ton of charm, and you get to explore an entire ship, so it's far from bad. I'm just not a huge fan of the missions themselves, and it can be pretty hard to remember the layout of the ship. The first mission has you exploring the whole ship to find all the glass shards of the broken timepiece. Not bad, I just don't find it to be a particularly interesting goal. The second one is why a lot of people don't like this chapter, Ship Shape. When this DLC was first released, a ton of people had a lot of trouble, to a point where some said they spent up to 2 hours on it. I personally did it in one attempt, but looking back, I'm pretty sure that was luck. Thankfully, they've since made it easier, but it can still be a problem to some. The goal of this one is you have to help out the captain by doing a certain amount of tasks under a time limit. The problem with this is it's really hard to remember where everything is, and the line that's meant to guide you is super unreliable. You do get these little icons that are meant to represent which rooms a task is in, but like I said a couple times before, the layout is pretty confusing, so this mission can be pretty frustrating, especially on your first playthrough. I think my main issue with this one is the fact that it's a second mission, so they don't give you a lot of time to familiarize yourself with the layout. And yeah, I realize that's probably why the first mission is based around exploring the whole thing, but I'm sorry, that's just not enough. Also, this mission is pretty long too, so I'm sure failing near the end is not a great feeling. The last mission, yes there's only 3, is definitely the best. Hat Kid intentionally crashes a ship into an iceberg to get a timepiece, and somehow manages to save everyone on board. I like this one a lot because I just like the idea. The music's pretty good and I just enjoy seeing the ship in a broken down, flipped over state. The last DLC level is NYAKUZA Metro, a giant subway station city run by a cat gang doing loads of cat crimes. Once Hat Kid gets her first timepiece here, it's immediately taken by a couple of cats who take it to the leader, the Empress. She's impressed with Hat Kid's ability to find these, so she hires her to find more. I love how Hat Kid has no idea what money is and just decides to pile it up on her ship. Throughout the level, the Empress is made out to be this super threatening leader who every cat fears. She even straight up murders someone in front of Hat Kid at one point, and God, I love it. She has such a cool design and voice, easily one of my favorite characters in the game. At the end, Hat Kid sneaks into her vault to steal her timepieces back, and immediately gets caught while sneaking out. Instead of killing her on the spot, the Empress puts on a $1 million bounty on her, so the level has you running through with the massive bounty on your head, and an entire metro full of money-hungry cats all trying to kill you. All with an absolutely incredible song playing in the background. Seriously, one of the best songs in the game. This is such a ridiculously cool idea. And it's just kinda okay. Most of the cats are just there to act as a wall, and there's very few that actually go after you. And gameplay wise, it's mostly just retreading level design you've already gone through while occasionally tricking the Empress to blow up stuff in your way. It also has like one of the most anticlimactic endings I've ever seen. Hat Kid gets cornered, but a couple cops scare the Empress off, and like, that's it. Yeah, not a great ending, but otherwise this level is fantastic. The level is structured in a similar way to Alpine Skyline. It has the same roam mode, but it's designed in a much more open way. Mostly, you can do the timepieces in any order in Alpine Skyline, but you're locked into more or less the same order here. They have various colored passes that you slowly unlock more of as a way of gating you off from certain areas. Other than that, the level design itself is a lot more open. There's split paths that lead you off into secret timepieces, big rooms that rely on exploration, and the areas are generally just a lot wider. If for whatever reason you think it's too open, you can also buy a guide that'll show you where to go, which is a really nice accessibility feature. Despite having a similar structure to one of my least favorite levels, I think this is definitely the best level in the game. Unlike Alpine Skyline, each area feels unique and I don't find anything anywhere close to bland. It still has those annoying cat thieves though. I really wish it didn't. It has some super strong platforming and exploration, and dude, this level is like so pretty. I love the neon lights everywhere. It looks so good with the underground graffiti plastered subway station look. I especially love how every train is pulled by giant cats. Fun fact, this part was actually hinted at since the game came out in Hat Kid's room. Really cool touch. I just love the trains in this level in general. Platforming on them is so much fun, and dodging stuff on it feels so cool, and it's great. Throughout the level, you can also find cats selling various hat flares, badges, or even outfits, including a NYAKUZA outfit, so you can really immerse yourself while committing cat crimes. You can even buy a baseball bat for some neat cat busting. I think my favorite badge here is the one that changes everything to black and red, and the description says, "My eyes hurt." It's obviously supposed to be a Virtual Boy filter. There's another one for the Game Boy if green and black is more your thing. You can also get some dies here that are a lot more interesting than the ones from the base game, like the pizza one, or a few that are actually costumes and not a die. There's a burger hat! So yeah, a lot of cool stuff here. The problem is there's absolutely no way you're gonna have enough pawns through natural gameplay, unless you're playing the PC version because, well, reasons I'll mention later. I remember when I played this game on Switch, I climbed up this tree in SUBCON Forest repeatedly for like an hour so I can have enough pawns for everything, so that was annoying. Aside from a few blemishes, NYAKUZA Metro is really good. This DLC is an absolute must because this is just straight up the best part in the game. On top of this and every other level in this game just being really good, most missions in this game have title cards kind of like a cartoon. The amount of effort that had to have gone into this is insane, and the art is really good too. That was totally unnecessary. Like, no one would have complained if that wasn't in the game, but they did it anyway, and I love them for it. Easily one of my favorite things about this game is the soundtrack because, my god, it is stellar. This is straight up my favorite soundtrack of all time. This game has an unnatural amount of bangers. There's so many songs in this game that just make me feel so happy because they're just so freaking good. There's so many that I'm only going to be able to talk about a fraction of the ones I love, but even then, I still talk more about the music here than I have in any other video because I can't just limit it to my typical 3. That's wrong. No, I'm not doing that. The main theme does such a perfect job of sounding like a song for a grand adventure, and I especially love the use of the theremin. They also remix this song a ton throughout the game, and each time they manage to make it sound so different, and they just all around sound really, really good. Train Rush is so catchy that every time I hear it, it just will not leave my brain for the next week. Oh, my favorite thing is how the song gets so much more faster and intense the closer the timer is to 0. I may give Alpine Skyline some crap, but it absolutely has some of the best songs in the game, one of my favorites being the Lava Cake Peak. But oh man, the boss themes! They are absolutely the best songs in the game. Your contract has expired as a fan favorite, and for a very good reason. The song that plays in DJ Grooves and the Conductor's Fight Battle of Award 42 is legitimately my favorite song ever. I remember when this game first came out, I listened to this song on like a daily basis for months. I really love how they play a slower and more intense version of the song in the final phase. It sounds really good. I know it's technically not a fight, but the song that plays during the Empress Chase in Yakuza Metro, Rush Hour, is another one of the best songs in the game. The crazy thing about the soundtrack is not only is every song like 5 minutes, but most of it was composed by one guy, Pascal Michael Stifel. That guy is insanely talented. It's so crazy to me that that guy is responsible for a massive chunk of my favorite songs ever. The Banjo-Kazooie composer Grant Kirkhope actually did compose exactly one song in the game, Her Spaceship. Unsurprisingly, it's the song that plays in Hat Kid Spaceship. I'm honestly not super into it, but I'm happy they got Grant Kirkhope in to do something. Grant being in the game also explains why this game straight up uses the Diddy Kong Racing announcer.
Get ready, go!
They got a few other well-known people to voice some characters, like the YouTuber Youngtown voices the Snatcher, who does an excellent job by the way, and the receptionist in Battle of the Birds might sound familiar to some. To be honest, I think the character he voiced in the beta build was more fitting. The conductor is also voiced by Xander Mobus, which you probably know as the Smash 4 and Ultimate Announcer. The voice acting in general ranges from great to okay, but I mostly like it and it adds a lot of personality. Even some of the more weaker performances are still a lot of fun to listen to. I mean, the way the mustache girl says this line
Looks like you've got a lot of cleaning up to do, huh?
reminds me a lot of how Hunter talks in the PS1 Spyro games, and I love that.
Incredible! You've got real talent. I could use a partner like you.
The visuals in this game are really nice considering it's an indie game. I love the environments in this game, like I really love how colorful and full of life Mafia Town is, or the use of dark green and purple in SUBCON Forest. I already talked about NYAKUZA Metro, but Arctic Cruise is really pretty too. I love how they use the starry night moon. It looks so good. The character models can be a bit crusty when looking at them up close, but it's an indie game with a smaller budget. I think they did a great job for what they had. The animations and cutscenes are also pretty limited, mostly just using the same stock animations for each character, usually without any mouth movements for talking, but again, limited budget. That money likely went to more important areas. The only time I really thought it was distracting was in the first Battle of the Birds cutscene when the owls and penguins just slide on screen. Like, they really couldn't have given them a basic walking animation. It's actually pretty jarring when you play the DLC levels because the animations in the cutscenes got a massive improvement. Seriously, they look great. You can tell they actually had a budget when making these. It makes me wish they would go back and reanimate the rest of the cutscenes. I know Cuphead did something similar, so it's not like it's unheard of. Now for the bosses. Bosses in 3D platformers tend to be an afterthought, and I definitely describe a couple fights like that in this game, but there's still some genuinely fantastic stuff here. The Mafia Leader and the Outhouse of Doom are both pretty good fights with some creative attacks. Like, I love when the Mafia Leader makes a Katamari ball of his own men, and come on, how many games have you fight a toilet? But the Snatcher and Battle of Award 42 fights are amazing. I love Snatcher's threatening monologue before the fight, and the way you attack him is brilliant. Every other boss in this game turns blue to signify you can attack them at that moment, but the Snatcher straight up tells you that he's not doing that, so you have to color him blue yourself by throwing one of his attacks back at him, and that's just so meta, I love it. The fight in general is just a lot of fun, and these attacks look so cool. My only problem is I feel like he dies too quickly, especially considering you can easily attack him twice when this happens. It makes me wish there was a harder version of this fight somewhere in this game. Foreshadowing. I really love how it ends. The Snatcher tries to get Hat Kid to sign this contract that says she can never come back, but Hat Kid changes it up so she can stay and be his friend. I love this so much. It's cute, charming, funny, and I always have the biggest smile on my face when I get here. But man, my favorite fight is definitely DJ Grooves and the Conductor. Like I said earlier, which one you fight is determined by who you let win. It doesn't really change the fight or anything, only the arena and obviously whoever you're fighting, but it's still a really cool touch. The real reason I like this fight so much is just because of the brilliant ways they reuse certain items you've seen throughout the chapter. Like you see the cars and photos from Picture Perfect, the saw blades from Train Rush, the disco ball from The Great Parade, and the knives from Murder on the Owl Express. Oh man, the second phase is so cool. I love the way the music slows down and the tension's dramatically raised by the game strapping the bomb from Train Rush to your back, and the deadly parade members from the big parade are following you constantly. It's so cool, and the way they managed to repurpose so many things from previous missions in such a way to where it makes sense in the context of the fight is so clever. Another really cool fight is of course the last boss. When you have enough timepieces, Mustache Girl breaks into Hat Kid's ship. Somehow, and steals all of your timepieces and uses them to basically become a god who determines who is good and who gets to live, and who is bad and has to die. The cool thing about this part is you actually get to play as Mustache Girl very briefly. She doesn't have all of Hat Kid's moves and even T-poses if you bounce on this burger long enough, but it's still pretty cool. Hat Kid goes to Mustache Girl's newly acquired castle of Judgment, and you see a massive line of various characters throughout the game. This eventually leads into what kind of feels like one of those Bowser levels from the Mario Galaxy games. In other words, this level is great. Hat Kid eventually meets up with Mustache Girl, and at this point you can chicken out, which leads to a fake out ending, but if you run up to her, the fight starts. The first phase is pretty simple, just gotta use the time stop hack to slow her down to get some hits in, or don't because the homing attack works pretty well too. After just a couple hits, the second phase starts and you get teleported to this weird vortex place. The fight mostly carries out the same way, only with a few more attacks, until Mustache Girl starts using a shield. The characters in the background who are mostly enemies throughout the game then start to help you out of hate for Mustache Girl. After some cherry bombs and giant mafia balls, a mafia goon has the idea to commit suicide so heart pawns will come out and refill Hat Kid's health. So then they all start murdering each other with this calming song in the background. Again, love how meta this is, but I'm still at full health. Murder is absolutely not necessary. Then the final phase happens. This one's really cool because Mustache Girl starts throwing out all kinds of attacks at you at once, while you're being pelted with heart pawns and this fantastic remix of the main theme plays. Once it's over, Mustache Girl is down, Hat Kid gets her final timepiece, pushes some characters into the vacuum of space, and goes home. You can also decide to give Mustache Girl a single timepiece, but I like being selfish because I feel like it's what Hat Kid would do. The credits then play with some really cool reimagined levels in 2.5D, and the end screen plays with Hat Kid finally resting with one of the best and most underrated songs in the game, simply titled The End. And that was A Hat in Time. Except no, because this game has an insane amount of content, and this video just is not long enough apparently. I already talked about the DLC levels, but the levels weren't the only things that got included in those packs. First off, we got the Seal the Deal DLC, which not only included Arctic Cruise, but also a new mode called Death Wish and a new Time Rift. The Time Rift is fine, it looks cool but it can be kinda tough and it's pretty long, so it's really annoying having to restart when you die. However, Death Wish is the real meat of this DLC. Snatcher appears in Hat Kid's room after you beat him in SUBCON Force and offers a new set of smaller contracts. These contracts being harder remixed versions of levels already present in the game, and when I say harder, I don't mean Super Mario Galaxy Prankster Comet's harder, I mean hardest thing I've done in a video game harder. Yeah, I'm really not exaggerating. This mode starting off with a SpongeBob reference really put me in a false sense of security when I first played this. Each level has a few different objectives. There's the main objective the whole level is based around, and then there's the side objectives that often make the restrictions somehow even more strict. And all of these objectives yield one Snatcher stamp, which you need in order to fill out the map. You also unlock cool stuff on the way as you fill out the map, my favorite thing being this low poly Hat Kid costume. It's so great and I love it. The objectives often include things like the normal level with an incredibly strict time limit, sometimes forcing you to straight up kill yourself just so you can spawn a little closer to where you need to go, or maybe a remixed much harder version of a level, also with an extremely limited timer. Maybe others don't have a timer but are still made with much harder level design. I still have no idea how you're supposed to hit these switches without the deadly parade hurting you. Thankfully, if the difficulty is too extreme for you, and believe me, it will be, you can pay a small fee and play on Peace and Tranquility mode at the cost of having this little Hat Kid stamp of shame. They're still really hard, but it's a lot more manageable. How it makes it easier depends on the level, but the main thing it does is get rid of the bonus objectives. Some of these challenges are just too much for me, so the few times I did let go of my pride and use Peace and Tranquility, I mostly did it because the bonus objectives were the thing that really made these challenges so unattainable to me. There's also the EX fights. They're the fights from throughout the game made to be harder by adding new attacks, making existing attacks much faster, and in the case of Kill Two Birds with One Stone, you have to fight both DJ Grooves and the conductor at once. I don't think these fights are too ridiculous on their own, but the bonus objectives make them a lot harder. I tend to use Peace and Tranquility on these, especially on the final Death Wish. The final one is titled Seal the Deal, just like the DLC pack, and has you going through a boss rush of all the EX fights, ending off on the EX Snatcher fight. Yep, they made the already much harder Snatcher fight even harder. This one is ridiculous. There's like 8 attacks going on at once at all times. This is straight up a bullet hell. On top of everything that's happening on screen? You have to do this whole thing without letting your health go lower than 2. How? Would you believe me if I told you that's not even the hardest one? Yeah, that honor would go for cruising for a bruising. You know that one Arctic Cruise level some claim they spent hours on? Well, imagine that with a much stricter time limit, like 3 times the amount of things being thrown at you at once, and instead of needing to do 18 tasks, you need to do 70? 70! You think that's enough, game? I think with enough determination, I can beat the other ones without peace and tranquility, eventually, but this one? No, never! This will forever be far outside my skill level. For a very specific crowd, Death Wish is amazing. Not many games offer a challenge this intense. Normally you'd have to go to like Mario World Kaizo hacks or do some kind of self-imposed challenge to get a difficulty anywhere close to this. And for people like that, I can absolutely see Death Wish being their favorite part of the game, but for the vast majority of people, unfortunately, myself included, they're not going to be into it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like a challenge, but yeah, this is just too much for me. That's not to say I dislike Death Wish as a whole, there's actually a lot I do love about it. One of my favorite things about it is how Snatcher constantly mocks you throughout the whole thing, and its taunts are pretty frequently specific to the mission you're in. One of my absolute favorites is in the Alpine Skyline Birdhouse mission where you have to avoid killing any birds on the way. And if you do happen to kill any, he'll say this.
I got 3 children. Guess they're orphans now. Oops.
That's the kind of dark humor I love to see in this game. There's also a few more generic ones that always get a good laugh out of me, like the Snatcher attempting to be more optimistic about your constant death.
They say you can't truly appreciate something until it's gone. I'm just helping you appreciate living.
Or how about this Mario 64 reference?
Did you know you could unlock Luigi by completing every Death Wish on the first attempt? I don't even know what that is, but that has to be genuine. I read it online.
There's also a lot of new title cards for missions that were redesigned for Death Wish, and they all look so cool. Some Death Wish missions are also just really creative. I think my favorite is the Overwound Windmill. It's a mission from Alpine Skyline, but everything going way faster or is on fire. My favorite thing about this is how they have this awesome remix of the Windmill Peak to make it way more intense. Oh, and if we're talking about music, Death Wish's main theme is incredible. There's also a few other challenges that aren't nearly as hard as the stuff you'd see in the rest of the mode. There's a few time rifts that are exclusive to this mode. They're definitely harder than the ones you'd find in the normal game, but still not nearly as hard as the rest of the mode, and serve as a nice break from the insanity. They also use assets already in the game, but it's interesting there's content like this in the mode at all. Another type of challenges you'll see are these candles. Light them and certain challenges are activated, and you can just kinda do them in any level you want. My favorite one being the one where you have to complete certain timepieces without jumping, forcing you to rely on this little hop you do when you tap the L trigger with the ice cap on. I like this one because it's a lot like those YouTube challenge videos, except it's actually a part in the game. And I also just really enjoy the fact they use this little quirk that happens when canceling out the ice hat that definitely wasn't put in the game for any specific reason. Completing it also just felt really great, even if I had to use peace and tranquility a few times. It's fun to see the Snatcher in utter disbelief that you're still alive, and you get this cool Snatcher skin. As a whole, I wouldn't call myself a fan of Death Wish, but there's a certain parts of it that I do really like, and I have a lot of respect for it for appealing to a niche that normally gets ignored. Whether or not I'd recommend this DLC, honestly, heavily relies on how much you think you like Death Wish. If it seems like if it's something for you, then yeah, I'd definitely say give it a shot, but I don't think Arctic Cruise is worth a $5 price tag, especially considering it's, in my opinion, the weakest level in the game. Not a bad one, just not as good as the rest. And like for $5, I think Death Wish is an amazing value because if you're planning on completing it, I think it takes like around 50 hours your first time, which is obviously a lot. But just for the level, yeah, not worth it. It does, however, go on sale for like half off, so like $2.50 very frequently. And at that price, yeah, go for it. Otherwise, only pay the full $5 if Death Wish seems like it'd be for you, or I guess if you just want to support the devs. I wish I could give this DLC a higher recommendation. I mean, I love the rest of the game so much, and that title, Seal the Deal, that's like big brain pun. I wish I was that smart to come up with something so clever. Anyway, not part of the DLC, but still added alongside the DLC in the form of the free update, we have the Smug Dance in local multiplayer. By rocking the D-pad up and down, you can make Hat Kid do the Smug Dance, and it's amazing. The Smug Dance actually has its origins in a Bob from Animal Crossing video, which was later redone with Hat Kid by the same guy. And I guess Gears for Breakfast loved it so much they made it a part of the real game. And can you blame them? The Smug Dance has easily become the biggest meme to spawn from this game, being used by Jack Black himself and even in other games. Even PUBG used it. This is my favorite thing. Okay, I guess what some people would consider more important is the local co-op with the new character, Bo Kid. To be honest, I'm not nearly as into Bo Kid's design as I am for Hat Kid's. She's still really cute, don't get me wrong. I just like how Hat Kid's top hat and cape were big parts of her design. They're things that you don't typically see little girls wear, so it made her stand out. Bo Kid doesn't really have anything like that, but regardless, she is way better than Timmy, the original second playable character. I do not like this design, at all. Anyway, I didn't get to play this mode very much because I'm lonely, but I still think it's really cool to have something like this in the game because it's just not a thing you see in games like this, like, ever. Since I'm lonely, I mostly just use it to cheese puzzles or sacrifice Bo Kid to see how big drops are because I think it's funny. You can also choose to play as Bo Kid when starting a new game if you've beaten the game before, so that's cool. On to the final DLC, NYAKUZA Metro. This DLC added the fully new level I already talked about, but also 2 new time rifts, stickers, emotes, and online party. The NYAKUZA time rift is really cool, being designed by a modder that won a contest that was going on at the time. The time rift is Roomba Factory, a level that tells the origins of Hat Kid's Roomba. Yes, really. The backstory in this one is actually really sweet. It almost makes me feel bad for riding Roomba around and repeatedly hitting him. Almost. The other one is based off the pasts of all the main levels in the base game, and it's pretty cool too. My one issue with this one is for some reason you have to beat the game in order to get this one to spawn, and I hate that. It's a literal one timepiece in the whole game you can't get before beating the game. I had to do the final boss twice just so I can get footage of that 56 in the background. I'm probably the only person who cares about this, but shut up, it's my video. And then there's the emotes. They do what you'd think. Hat Kid performs in certain animations or says certain things that get an emotion or a message across. You can customize this with stickers, which you can find throughout the Metro. They're basically also just emotes, but with some really nice art attached to them and the ability to equip any 3 you have. You'll find the vast majority of these scattered around NYAKUZA Metro, but you can also find shiny variants that randomly spawn in any level. There's some really good stickers. My favorite is the one where Hat Kid enthusiastically yells out the word murder in a Scottish accent. You might be wondering why emotes are in this offline game, or maybe you're not because you already heard me say the words online party. But yeah, this game has online. And it's not even just online with 1 or 2 other players, or even 10 or 20. It's online with 49 other players. That's so insane! And I couldn't get footage of that many players because my internet is awful, so you're gonna have to settle with trailer footage. But still, how many platformers offer a thing like this? Playing this with friends is so much fun. There's not a ton you can do other than just mess around and hit each other. There's not much interactivity otherwise, but even then, it's still so much fun. Unfortunately, this is exclusive to the Steam version of the game, so it's not available on any console release or even the GOG release. This is because it relies on the built-in features that are only available on Steam. However, the price of the DLC is lower on other platforms to reflect the lack of online party, so that's nice. The way you set up rooms is also a little simplistic. You just type in warden or whatever, and you'll join in whoever else is in that room. There's technically no public lobbies, but the community as a whole just kinda agreed unanimously that the public room for this game is called Peck. When I did this, I tried to throw someone out of bounds, but instead I got them stuck in a wall. I felt bad about this, so I spent the next 5 minutes trying to get them out until I gave up. But I did clip myself out of bounds a couple times. Another cool thing is if you're online but don't have any room typed in, you'll occasionally come across other hack kids out in the wild, so that's neat. Overall, NYAKUZA Metro DLC pack is far better than the first, and I highly recommend it if you don't already have it. It's so good. If, however, Online Party wasn't interesting enough for you, things become even more fun with mods. Like there's the Online Party Plus mod, a mod that's pretty essential if you ask me. It allows you to play tag, spawn a ball, and easily the best play hide and seek. Aside from being a semi-socially acceptable way for a 23-year-old to play hide and seek, it's just a lot of fun to play with friends. Because Hack Kid's movement is just so good, and there's a surprising amount of hiding spots in both Hack Kid's ship and even McDonald's. I'll explain this soon enough. It does rely on the honor system because it's really easy to cheat by turning the camera around while everyone's hiding, and it's especially easy if you're in control of the timer, but if no one's lame, you should be fine. If messing around is still more your thing, there's a few other mods that are great for that. Like there's this mod that allows you to grapple onto anyone, allowing you to do this. It gets even better if the person you're playing with also has that mod too. You can grapple onto each other and just helicopter out of bounds. It's great. Exploring out of bounds with friends is one of the most fun things to do in my opinion. I personally like combining the infinite jump badge and turbo nozzle to get extreme speed while defying gravity. There's a surprising amount of things to see out of bounds in this game, and one of the better examples would be SUBCON Forest. SUBCON Forest has things like this burning tower, the ice tower, or even this area above Queen VANESSA'S manor that even has collision for some reason. There's a weird amount of detail here. The game also hides these sawed-off cheese wheels everywhere out of bounds, and they're always fun to just stumble upon. There's probably still a ton I've never seen. We also messed around in Mafia Town and went to this volcano way off in the distance, and we discovered there's an extra hack kid way below it. I later got a better looking single player. I have no idea why this is here, and I can't find anything online, so it could be undiscovered for all I know. It was incredibly far out of bounds, so it's possible. Oh yeah, I used the developer console to get here in single player, which is actually a lot more effective way to explore out of bounds, and it's just a setting you turn on in the game itself, rather than being a separate mod you have to download. The only thing is you can only use it in single player. I was able to find a lot more hidden cheese wheels with this, and you can even access the unused third floor in Queen VANESSA'S manor. It was cut for being too annoying, and thank God. There's a lot of other stuff you can do with the dev console, but I honestly only really care about ghosting everywhere. Sorry, got pretty off topic there. There's a ton of other cool mods, like you're gonna have Flood for Mario Sunshine, so obviously I love this one. It's so cool, it has all the nozzles and they work just like the real game, minus the limited water. There's a lilac headpiece from Freedom Planet. It makes you do the Cyclone move from that game, which kind of breaks the platforming, but it's a lot of fun. This one's actually an official mod too, along with the Thought Bubble from Psychonauts. There's a few cool character mods too, like Mario, Bob from Animal Crossing, Marg. What's wrong with her arm? A bunch of weirdly fast animated SpongeBob characters, even a bunch of Sonic characters. In this mod you can play as Sonic, the Werehog, Shadow, and Metal Sonic. Obviously Sonic, Metal Sonic, and Shadow can go fast and even homing attack, but you also have the Werehog who has stretchy arms. You can use them to fight or even swing around. Unfortunately, there's no constant jazz music though. There are more specific abilities too, like Metal Sonic has this ridiculously overpowered dive that can make you go across an entire level. This is insane. Shadow has Chaos Spear abilities, and Sonic can roll down slopes to gain speed. Sonic is definitely my favorite out of all these because favoritism, but he also strikes a Sonic Adventure pose while bouncing a burger, so I feel like that justifies my favoritism. There's also a bunch of skins you can unlock that turn you into other characters like Amy, Chaos, or Blaze. There's even Dreamcast Sonic, which is all kinds of incredible, and also Sonic with Drip. Other than that, this mod is really cool and is an absolute must if you're a Sonic fan. It's easily the best character mod I've played. You can also swap Cooking Cat with Garfield. Aside from that, there's some more minor mods like the Diary Plus mod. Yeah, I didn't talk about this earlier, but Hack Kid actually has a diary you can read in her secret pillow fort, which, fun fact, is a reference to Luigi's diary from Paper Mario. Anyway, it's really cool. It has Hat Kid jotting down her thoughts on every main timepiece in the game. The only problem is you can't go back to previous entries for whatever reason. Also, meaning the first 8 or so entries are straight up impossible to read because you just can't access that room that early. This mod fixes that by allowing you to read any entry at any time, and it even catalogs all pictures you found throughout all the purple time rifts in the game. This honestly should just straight up be in the base game because it's just better. That and the Online Party Plus mod, both of these just make the game objectively better, and I really do hope Gears for Breakfast makes that part of the main game. It's not like they haven't done that before. Most of the extra languages added since launch were only mods at one point. I think my favorite mod in the whole game is the one that just gives the conductor googly eyes. This is so good. There's a mod that actually adds to the hub world called the Spaceship EX mod. It's mostly just an expanded version of the hub that includes things like a more natural way to go in modded levels, or my favorite, the PvP area. This is pretty simple, last stand the platform wins, and it's actually a lot of fun. My only real issue with this being the speed up power-ups disable your attacks, so it's actually better to not get them. However, if stage mods are more your thing, don't worry, there's a lot of those, and I really do mean a lot. There's a ton of level imports from various games like Delfino Plaza from Mario Sunshine, Freeze's Peak from Banjo-Kazooie, or the Mushroom Kingdom from Mario Galaxy. I love Emerald Coast from Sonic Adventure. It's weirdly fun to run through this as Sonic with the Adventure skin in A Hat in Time, even if it doesn't always work the way I would have liked. There's even a bunch of areas from Sonic Adventure mod into the game. It's really fun, they somehow made it feel like A Hat in Time, transforming some of these areas to be structured more like a Collect-a-thon, unlike the original Sonic Adventure where it was always get from point A to point B, at least with Sonic. Sure, I'm mentioning Sonic a lot in this non-Sonic video. We even got some levels from some SpongeBob games like Jellyfish Fields and Downtown Bikini Bottom from Battle for Bikini Bottom, and the level I'm Ready Depression from the SpongeBob movie game. I was thoroughly impressed with this one. Like, they actually remade some of the cutscenes of the Hat in Time characters, and that's so cool. I just wish I could have seen Drunk Hat Kid. Obviously, we got more than just level imports. There's a lot of really cool original levels too. Operation Re-Rail almost feels like another take on Train Rush, with this level falling apart as you're running through it, except it has the Empress, and honestly, this is just better than Train Rush's climax. Botanical Bypass is a really pretty one. A little too pretty. I have a pretty good PC, and this one tanked really hard early on, like single digits hard. But it did eventually clear up the further it got into the level. Still a really good level, but maybe not worth having the literal thousands of moving plants on the walls. I love the fact that there's an entire level just based around McDonald's called McDream Paradise, and it features a Ronald DJ Grooves. Hat Kid steals the Declaration of Independence is another really good one. I mostly just like it for the absurdity. I love how overly dramatic this one can get. We even have some visual novel representation in this in the form of McDonald's Adventures with Hat Child Chan and Timmy San. What is this, and why is there so much McDonald's in this mining community? You can even play as a Chicken McNugget! Oh man, the coolest mod would be the Breathing Sea. This one starts off pretty normal, but then you get these insanely fun water-based moves that allow you to soar across the ocean, making this basically a Wind Waker 3D platformer, a concept Nintendo would actually do in the form of Bowser's Fury. I think this is probably the best level mod, but it's also pretty long, so definitely set aside time for this one. There's also a really cool icy one called Frostbite Summit. It's a pretty solid level that even comes with a new hat. But I'm mostly talking about this because a good friend of mine, Thomas, or known as Chaotic Otaku Online, voices the penguins in it.
Oh my stars, you're okay.
That's how I feel. Just stop getting upset.
I do not want to spoil this.
All right. Okay. Well, don't spoil it. Oh my goodness. Oh, that just sounds so cool. Just hearing my voice.
Yeah, I heard Double Thomas. If you watch my LP channel, you might already recognize him. He's appeared in a handful of videos there. For me, it's just really cool to have a friend in this game, even if it's only a mod. Even cooler knowing I'm why he got the role because I sent it to him. I'd love to talk more about this and other mods, but there's just so much to talk about here with over 4,000 mods with no sign of the community stopping anytime soon. There's basically an endless amount of content here, not to mention you can play these online too. I'm not even scratching the surface of all the cool stuff the community has made, so please check this stuff out if you have the game on Steam. What makes these mods even cooler and more worth checking out is they really couldn't make it any easier to play them. You can obviously just find whatever mod through the Steam Workshop, but you can also download them in-game, and assuming it's a simple one like a level, you don't have to reload the game or anything, it's just there. The only thing is you gotta be careful about downloading older mods, more specifically ones released before the NYAKUZA Metro update. Those mods tend to just not play nice at the current version of the game and crash the game pretty frequently, so be careful about older stuff is what I'm saying. Some mods will work fine, others won't. I think the one issue I have is there's no way to delete progress, which is a real problem for levels like the Breathing Sea, so you just have to play on another save file if you want to start that from the beginning. But other than that, it's really simple and worth messing around with. Would you believe me if I told you I'm still not done? While technically not part of the actual game, I really want to talk about the B-side soundtrack. It's the second soundtrack you can buy in Steam, full of unused songs, remixes, and the songs from the DLC packs. It doesn't have every unused song, like this song right here from the Alpha Bookstore theme originally had lyrics sung by Hackkid herself about the unused character, the Moon Jumper. But the version with lyrics are nowhere to be found, and a shame too, I actually really like those lyrics. A Hat in Time also had a different soundtrack composed by a different composer named Eric Gleiser. Those songs are nowhere to be found too, but that makes perfect sense because I'm pretty sure Gears for Breakfast don't own those songs. If you really want to own them, Eric Gleiser actually released these songs himself under the name of an OST in time. So that's nice. Other than that, yeah, there's a lot of great stuff here. The Kickstarter trailer theme, Underwater Mafia Town, and even Sand and Sails' theme, a completely unused level that would eventually turn into Alpine Skyline. The remixes are pretty good too, but for the most part, I tend to prefer the original versions already found in the game. The strongest exception, and honestly the main reason I'm even covering the B-side soundtrack, is a remix of The Lava Cake Peak by Julia Henderson. This is one of the best remixes I've ever heard. It's so good. Julia Henderson actually has her own YouTube channel where she remixes all kinds of video game music, and that's all really great, and I very much recommend checking her stuff out. Finally, we have the last thing I'm gonna talk about, which means this video is finally almost over. Oh my god! The console ports. Like I said in the beginning of this video, I originally played this game on PS4 and eventually got the Switch version when that came out a while after. I have no experience with the Xbox One version, but from what I've heard, it's about the same as the PS4 port. When I got the game on PS4, I noticed there was a lot of small differences between it and the PC version. Some effects were missing or even broken, there were no taunts of any kind, some very small level design differences, and even some voices that were oddly silent. These things confused me for ages until I learned that instead of porting the day one PC version, they ported a slightly older build, and yeah, that explains a lot. I don't know much about game development, so I really couldn't say why they did this. Maybe it was just a way of getting the console ports out faster, I guess. But it's really weird regardless. The game also had very infrequent but very noticeable frame dips, and this was just kind of the game for a long time. Console players didn't have access to any of the DLC or even any kind of patch to begin with. Until way later when the Switch version came out, but even then, PS4 and Xbox One players were just kinda stuck. A lot of people were understandably upset by this, feeling like they were screwed out of the full experience or even ripped off. I never thought this was true. They're a small dev team and were putting their focus where most of their player base was, which would be PC and Switch. You can make the argument that they should have balanced things a bit better, and I'd actually agree with that, but even so, that's still far better than the malicious accusations people were throwing at them. Thankfully, fairly recently, Gears for Breakfast finally updated the game and released a DLC for all to enjoy, so I guess none of that matters now. I admittedly don't have any experience with this version of the PC port, but it seems to be just the same experience on PC, just without the online party mode, mods, and in 30 FPS. Though apparently you can play it in 60 on the PS5 and Series X, not sure why it takes that much to play at that frame rate, but whatever. Definitely a fine way to play the game, and if you don't have a PC, this is the next best thing. As for the Switch port, for a while Gears for Breakfast was denying that it would ever come out. But then it did and got all the DLC way before any other console port. Again, I totally get why other console players were very, very annoyed by the situation. I don't think the accusations people were throwing at Gears for breakfast was fair. The reason they thought that it wouldn't happen comes down to the engine this game runs on, Unreal Engine 3, which is an engine that Switch doesn't support. It does support Unreal Engine 4, but that's still a different engine. If you don't know what that means, all you need to know is, well, it doesn't make a Switch port impossible. It does make it really hard, and I can totally understand why this very, very small dev team thought it would never happen. But then it did, and it's about as crusty as you'd expect. It's far from a bad port. The game is totally playable, looks nice enough, and has all the content the unmodded PC game has. With the only real gameplay downgrade being there's no split screen co-op, only single screen, which obviously makes things a lot more awkward. Other than that, there's definitely a lot of noticeable graphical downgrades, like the title cards are a much lower resolution, the textures are a bit muddier, and the frame rate can be a problem. It can be distracting, but for the most part it shouldn't impact gameplay, unless it stutters, and it definitely does that a lot more than I'd like it to. Just like most Switch ports, there's absolutely better ways to play this game, but it's still a lot of fun. Not to mention, I love not only having a physical version of this game, but also a portable version. I love being able to play this game wherever, it rocks. Unless you care about those two things, if you have any other way to play this game, maybe look into whatever that is. But if it's the only way, this version is still very much worth playing. A Hat in Time is a fantastic game regardless of what platform you're on, so any of the versions I've talked about in this video will do, but if you can, PC is the way to go. Anyway, please play this game. There's a reason I have put over 234 hours in this game and got every single achievement. It's good. So, that's A Hat in Time. In my opinion, it's one of the most charming, fun video games you can possibly play. And considering it's like $30, around $40 if you want the DLC, so it's pretty cheap, I really, really could not recommend this one enough. It's one of the best games you can play in the platforming genre, so please, please play it. Get the PC version if you can, because online party and mods add an insane amount of value to it, but if you don't have a PC that can run it, then the console versions will do you just fine. Yeah, you're not going to get nearly as much playtime out of it, but the base game is so good as is, it's still an experience worth playing. So, I guess I'm done with the video now, and my god, I am not looking forward to editing this one. I think it's going to be like over an hour, and I knew this video was going to be long, I just didn't think it'd be that long. But yeah, I'm happy to finally do it. I've been wanting to do this game since I started my channel. Actually, it's always been high on my priority list. Just a lack of a good PC held me back for a while, and when I did get one, I had other stuff planned. Also, you might have noticed I got a good new camera, which is awesome. So yeah, but like unfortunately, summer is starting. It's still spring, but it's like near the end of spring, and it's currently 85 degrees, and I have no air conditioning, so I'm sorry if I'm sweaty in the next few videos. Normally it doesn't show up my camera because the camera quality's been bad up until now, but now, yeah, sorry about that, but I can't do anything about it. Anyway, the video is done, and I'm happy, and bye.